Just like my previous video on Resident Evil 6, 5 is very similar in overall setup, with a static resolution of 1080p and an unlocked frame rate. This is the unpatched version, meaning we're just running Switch 1 firmware and we'll see no graphical differences. But let's take a look to see if the Switch 2 can boost this experience to 60 FPS. Starting off when we're first given control at the very beginning of the game, traversing through this linear segment establishes a good baseline of performance between the two. The original device is actually dropping below 30 FPS here, which is pretty surprising, but is likely due to the large number of NPCs in this area. Let's jump a bit further to the first major combat encounter. We're stuck in a small house, being swarmed with many enemies. The game struggles here when they're alive and on screen, only really recovering as more are killed. As the arena opens to a village scene, we're given a larger space to explore. And while it does perform slightly better here, it's still pretty unstable, with the frame rate often bouncing between the mid to high 20s and mid 30s, which doesn't feel great whilst playing. Here we are on the Switch 2 in the same area. I found a few moments where there are drops, with the most drawn out section being at the very beginning when all the enemies are spawning. Other issues do crop up throughout this fight, but they're often smaller drops that resolve themselves pretty quickly. Overall though, the game feels much smoother. Obviously other optimizations were needed on Switch 1, but the addition of a 30 FPS cap would have worked to improve the experience. But I guess owners of Switch 2 now get to benefit because of it, instead of waiting for a patch or a dedicated Switch 2 edition. Generally, throughout my playthrough of a few more campaign levels, this level of performance remains true. However, other smaller combat areas with less enemies frequently do achieve better results. Cutscenes are also rendered in-engine, but sadly I couldn't use the actual software, Teardrop, to count the FPS as it was reporting false numbers. But from what I can tell from counting frames, it's basically the same story. Around 30 FPS on Switch 1 and 60 FPS on Switch 2.
I have your weapons for you here. Check them.
Like RE6, the multiplayer modes do seem to be pretty dead here. So once again, I jumped into a solo round of the Mercenaries No Mercy, which is basically a more taxing version of the original Mercenaries mode. Honestly, I was actually kinda surprised here. I thought this would easily be terrible, especially after seeing that first combat comparison, but it's not as bad as I thought. Now don't take what I'm saying as any form of high praise, because this is still an experience that is regularly below 30 FPS. Particularly when large groups are near or on screen. And flipping over, the Switch 2 experience is much improved, with the console frequently hitting the game's cap. Although large crowds are still an issue though. Resident Evil 5 also features online and local co-op, which allows you to play the entire campaign with a friend. So, to test how split screen runs, I jumped into the first mission with my partner locally. And from the get-go, it was extremely apparent how bad the game was performing. So much so that even she noticed and commented on it. And she's not usually the type to care about video game performance unless it's very distracting. Genuinely though, when the FPS is this bad, it makes your character feel way more sluggish and unresponsive. As soon as we switched over to the same scenario on Switch 2, we both immediately noticed the difference. However, that's not to say this is great by any means. The console is very often hitting the high 30s to mid 40s range, and its instability is a big portion of why the game feels so messy here. The differences between running the same combat area in single player and in co-op are pretty stark, dropping from a mostly stable experience to basically one that never truly keeps 60 FPS. Regardless, you'll immediately see and feel the upgrade from the Switch 1 to the 2 here, as we did. In terms of loading speeds, we see a nice improvement, dropping around 7 seconds from the final loading time. This will extend to the many loading screens throughout the game, making the experience feel slightly more modern and polished. Anyways, the Resident Evil games are still on a pretty good sale on the eShop currently, so make sure to pick them up before they're gone if you want them. That's what I've been doing to make these comparisons. Thanks so much for watching as always, and bye!